thoughts from me on this whole foreign aid bill business. You know, sometimes when making difficult political decisions, it's useful to ask, what would Reagan do? Right now seems to be one of those times. House Republicans are faced with foreign aid funding bills that are not popular. On a procedural rule vote in order to bring the funding bills to the floor today, 55 Republicans opposed it. A small handful even want to take down Speaker Mike Johnson. Now, there are measures in those funding bills that many conservatives don't like, and there are measures that many conservatives believe should have been in the bills in the first place and are not. But what would Reagan do? Well, I believe the Gipper, for whom I worked as a budget deputy over 40 years ago, would support these bills. Why? Well, with all their imperfections, the basic point as I see it is this. We have to support, fund, and arm our allies. It's a very dangerous world out there. And President Joe Biden has made it a far more dangerous world because of his feckless, weak, indecisive, and outright mistaken policies in the last 3 years plus. Starting with Afghanistan, right through to mishandling Russia and Ukraine, appeasing Iran, wilting in the face of Chinese hostilities, curtailing the U.S. production of fossil fuels, opening the southern border into a catastrophic crime-laden disaster, and allowing more than 10 million illegal immigrants in the country. But conservatives know this and agree on it. The question is what to do. And there is no perfect answer. I believe Reagan would say yes. Arm Ukraine so Russia can't overrun it. Recognize that a lot of the $60 billion targeted there will help the U.S. industrial defense base. Help Taiwan because the Chinese Communist Party threatens them on a daily basis. And, of course, put up the $26 billion for Israel, which is double the original number because they are one of our greatest allies, and the very existence of the democratic Israeli state is being threatened. Reagan would surely counsel against the use of American troops, but he did, on many occasions, provide funding and weapon sales to our allies around the world who are helping us to fight Soviet communism. Today's new axis of evil, Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea, must not be allowed to prevail. Now, whether it's a new Cold War or not, the reality is those four countries are our enemy. And even on a limited basis, such as the foreign aid funding bills now on the House floor, will do something to help our friends and slow down our enemies. In a sense, House Republicans and conservatives can save Joe Biden from himself and from his failed policies. We don't particularly want to rescue him politically, but when it comes to national security, we want to support America first. Now, these bills are not going to be paid for, and that is most unfortunate. Also, there is no off-ramp negotiating mandate with respect to Ukraine, and there should be. And there's some very weak Chinese banking sanctions to stop them from buying Iranian oil, but that will come to nothing because the Bidens are never going to enforce it. By the way, I believe a Donald Trump presidency would threaten China with double or triple across-the-board tariffs until they stop funding Iran's war against Israel, or for that matter, Russia's war against Ukraine. But that's a separate issue. Perhaps the greatest tragedy in the House bill, H.R. 2, is not going to be in this package to close the border. Not even a core version is going to make it. Doesn't have the votes to pass the House in the next 24 hours. That's a tragedy, because that was a solid bill, would have closed the border. But then again, there are insufficient votes in the Democratic Senate to pass it now anyway. Yet for all this, I believe Reagan would have supported it. He was always a great believer that when negotiating, if you could get 70% now, you should take it and go for the 30% rest of it later on. Later on, that's the November 5th election, when Donald Trump can be president, the Senate turn Republican, and the House GOP picks up new reinforcements for a bigger majority. That's the get the rest later part. As Speaker Mike Johnson, he is a genuine supply-side constitutional conservative who unfortunately is playing with an incredibly thin deck of cards. For those that don't like him, all right, how about wait until next January for a vote? Personally, I support him and believe he has the potential to be a great House Speaker. And if Ronald Reagan were alive today, I believe he'd agree with me on all of it. Okay, that's my take. Like it or not, some will agree and some will disagree.